All right, looking back to the surface connection, right? What we want to do is instead of the actual rectangle that it's requesting, we need to figure out a way to give it something else and then kind of trim it down, right? Because the populate 2D is always going to want a rectangle. Okay, so we can't say rather than a rectangle, I'm going to give you a triangle. Because if we give it a triangle, it's going to give you an error. So what we have to actually do is create a rectangle around whatever object we feed it, right? So we could draw a rectangle physically around it, like that, and then map it to that instead. But don't do this right now because that's not what we're actually going to do. But if I change the size, right, then it no longer extends beyond the extents of my surface. So rather than doing that, we do this thing that's called bounding box. And bounding box will basically just calculate a planar frame around whatever geometry you feed it. And again, I forget where bounding box is, so let's just go BB. Oh, that's right, I think it's under surface analysis. Yeah, surface primitive. So bounding box says it's going to solve oriented geometry bounding boxes, which basically says I'm going to put a frame around whatever you give me. So now if I plug my surface into the content, right, notice how it's a generic geometry input. So surface goes in there. Notice how now that bounding box is around the entire extent of my surface. If my surface moves, it goes with it. If it increases in size, it increases as well. Okay, so that's very important for us because we have to give this thing a rectangle. So that the output values are going to be the box, which actually kind of comes through as a solid, but it can read as a rectangle. And wait, hold on, what's the difference? Aligned bounding box and the bounding box. Okay. So one of them is going to be read in a particular coordinate plane. The other one is not. In this particular case, we're going to use the one that is aligned to the world coordinates because we're working in the XY plane anyway. Keep it simple, right? So the bounding box is going to go into the rectangle. Now you see that we're kind of getting somewhere with that. And then we're going to plug the same bounding box into the B value of our Voronoi group. So the coolest part about this now is that I can basically change the scale all I want and it'll scale everything else up with it. Or I can go back and I can change the other input values for the Voronoi. So I can change the count of populate 2D. I can change the locations using random seeds. What does P do? Pre-existing population. I don't know how that functions really. I've never used it. So these are sliders. You don't have to add these. I'm just showing you right now. So I'm going to say 0 is less than, say, 50. Go there. So that's 0. But I can kind of add them in and make them really large with very few. Or I can keep increasing until I've got plenty. Similarly, I can add a seed in, which is going to just change the configuration like this. Think of that. Think of seed kind of like a randomizer. It's going to give you a variable shift in all the numbers. And something to note here is that if you zoom in on Voronoi group, we're not going to use this now, but just so you know that this stuff exists. This is one of the few instances where you can just plug in multiple instances of surfaces that are going to catch or receive a Voronoi map. Just something to throw out there. You can do many of them at once. All you have to do is just go plus, 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 and then just start plugging them in. Okay. The next step for us is, well, trying to figure out, well, actually, no, you don't need the curve. I just put that there so you could see it. Yes. You can delete it. So I will do that for you. Delete it. There. Do we need to pause for a sec so you guys can catch up, or you're all here? Because I don't think I did too much. All right. So now that we've got the bounding box, right, what do you think our next step is going to be? Right? It's kind of been a constant that we have to create something and then do what?
Delete it?
Right. So we've constructed it. Now we're going to deconstruct it so that, in this case, it only maps onto the surface we've given it. Okay, so it looks a little different. It's not just a subtract or a split like you're used to. It's actually going to be, what was it? Rint. Yeah, region intersection. So region intersection is a little bit misleading, just a tad. It says it will solve the intersection of two sets of planar closed curves. However, in plugging in certain information, the thing to understand about it is that sometimes Grasshopper will convert the information that you give it manually or automatically, so you don't have to do it manually. And this is one of those cases. So maybe I'm just confusing you by saying that, but we don't need this curve, by the way. So we can actually plug in both the Voronoi group to the top. Let's just plug that into the top one. And then the actual surface is going to plug into B. And now you see what you're selecting is only on the surface itself. So I'll take it a step further and turn everything else off. And so here you can truly see what you have. Yes?
Would it matter which one you put in, the A or B?
I don't know. I don't know if it does it by order. Let's read the description. So this says first set of regions and second set of regions. So my thought is, theoretically, no, it doesn't matter if you switch them up, but let's try it. B and that.
Didn't matter.
Looks like it does.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that.
So so think of it this way. What it's basically doing is it's going to say, let's subtract from an item the profile of another item, right? So basically, if you're going to do a trim, you're going to select the object to trim first, and then you're going to select the object to trim it with after, or at least Rhino does it that way. It's weird for split anyway. So it's going to be that, which is the object we're going to cut, and then we're going to select the object we're cutting it with. Whoops, sorry, which is
to contain
that.
it in that order.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good thought, though. It really is, because if you find yourself kind of stuck, like if you put it in the other way and just nothing happened, when it has an A and a B value that read the same thing, it's always a good troubleshooting step to just swap them and see if it functions the opposite way than what you think. Okay, so something that I want to... I'm not sure if we have to graft it. I won't yet, and then we'll see how it behaves. Yeah. I don't think we need to. Okay, so at this point we've got the lines or the curves, and then we have a surface, right? But what we want to do is create cells. I mentioned that these are going to be frames that we're going to create the Voronoi that has thickness, right? So every time we have a Voronoi cell, I should say an intersection, it's going to look like this. right, where it has thickness to the actual line, so that we're not just cutting panels. So the way that I'm going to do that, oh, maybe I should just stop the video here, I suppose. I'll just leave a little cliffhanger for the video anyway. The way that we're going to do this is by using the lines to trim the surface, and then we're going to reduce the size of the cells using scale. It's the easy kind of rapid prototyping way of doing it. So we'll do that in the next video.